Hey, how's it going? I wanted to make a video to help you get through this flowchart issue that you've been having with the teacher. First, I wanted to show you, I actually had this same comment here in my comment box. I think he copied and pasted it to more than one student. But I will say, I actually ended up getting 18 out of 20 points. I got a good grade on it. In other words, I've been doing just fine. I think he just did that for everyone for his own reasons. But in order to help clarify, I want to point out those key things that the professor is looking for when you turn in a flowchart. The first is the IPO and design page. I put this on one page. It usually fits for these simple programs we're doing in this book. So that would be the purpose, input, process, output statements, as well as that UI wireframe that he wants, the design of what the program is supposed to look like. This next tab here, the event handlers, that's personal for me. It is not required. I'll show it to you real quick. We did this in the very first program, and then ever since he said we don't need this or the other one where it lists every single little thing. However, I personally still add it just for my own reference. It is not a requirement, so you can ignore this. So this first page here though, the IPO and design, this is one he requires. The next one he requires is the main flow. Think of the main flow as the general logic of the program overall. It is literally from when you start running the program to when you're no longer using the program at all. That is the start to end. The way I also think of this is it is not at all supposed to demonstrate what the main flow does. Some people do. They start to show what each of the processes are on the same page. I don't, to keep it simple. And so in the main flow, instead of showing like what the calculate button does, what the clear button does, it is literally from, in general, what you do from the moment you start the program to the moment you're done with it. In this case, I'm using Chapter 3's homework. This was the one where we had to do the miles per gallon calculation. So on here, it simply says the user will enter in a capacity for the gallons in the tank. The user enters a value for the miles. And then the user can either calculate these two values, they can clear the input they just made, or they can exit the program. I also want to point out, do not use a diamond. I believe this is one of the reasons why I got points taken off. You're supposed to use one of these boxes when you know, the sub process or whatever, for the exit as well. Do not use a diamond. That's just in case you look at mine and try to copy it exactly. Don't use the diamond shape. Now, moving on. This is the main flow. This is literally from when you start it to when you end it. I mean, that's it. That's all it does. They enter in some values, they can push a few buttons, and that's it. I have to still show what goes on though when I click this button. So that's the next thing he requires. And he requires specifically to put the name of the button or the name of the method that you're going to use in this little lozenge here. That was one of his other requirements. So make sure you put the name when you're showing the method, the flow of the method. Like in this case, it's the calculate button. You're supposed to start off by using the oval lozenge shape here with the name of the method, not start like that, not this. When you're showing how the actual method goes, you put the name of the method in the lozenge. Think of it as like it's this method that's starting. So you're showing the name. Similarly, you put return instead of end in the very last lozenge. See down here you put end. When you're showing the methods, you put the name of the method in the first one and then you put the word return in the last one. That is because after this method is complete, it returns to the main flow. It returns back to this state. You can think of it that way, and that's why you use the word return. And that was his second requirement that he had. This middle stuff here, I can't really help you with that. That's the actual internal logic, so this was basically my answer to it, right? So I can't really help you there. I will point out the shapes and the meaning of the shapes, in case there's a confusion there. The squares are literally a process that's occurring. See, a process. So that's just the rectangles. Sorry, I said square. They're just rectangles, and you're putting in a process. Parallelograms, like this shape here, denote input or output. So when you're saying, oh, I'm going to display something formatted, right, to whatever, like in this case, I displayed it formatted to do decimal places. I'm displaying something. It's an output. So it's in an output box. When I had the user do input, I believe I showed that on the main flow. Yeah, see, the user inputs, because they're inputting something. You use the parallelogram shape, and those are pretty much the key ones that we use for this. And for the current week homework, we're going to be using the diamond, which is decision. That's for the if then else, if statements. You use the diamond to denote a decision, and you use that for the select case, I believe, as well for the test case, because it's a decision. Those are other things to keep in mind in case you're having trouble using the right shapes. Other than that, I'm just going to show you here. That's the general case for what he requires, is an IPO tab with the purpose input, process output, the wireframe design required, the main flow from when you start the program, all the stuff that can happen in general, in this case, the entries, the button presses, right? You can push some buttons and then the program's over when you're done with it. That's the main flow, that's required. And then you need to show each individual module, and this, think of, or each individual event handler. Just think of it as each individual button. When it comes up, you have to show, this is for my calculate button, this is for my clear button, this is for my exit button, etc. And lastly, he requires you to put the names in there. I do believe I forgot one more important part, actually, the declarations. I did actually, yep, it says here, all declarations need to be stated at the beginning of the program or inside a module. I forgot this part, so let me go over this real quick. To make sure you have the declarations, notice how it says at the beginning of the program or inside a module. For Visual Basic, 90% of the time, it's going to be inside a module. Sometimes, though, when you start the program, when the program first begins, you're going to want to declare some things at the beginning of the program. I'm going to show you how to do both. First, I'm going to show you how to do a declaration at the beginning of a program. You would technically put that in your main flow, and it would go right here. You would grab a square, or a rectangle, sorry, just like this, and you would put it right in between, and in here you would start writing your declarations. Whoops. Now, I already did my declarations for this assignment, so you'll actually get to see the box. But if you made declarations when the program first starts, you would denote that here in this box. Oh, I made some declarations, and I'll show you how to write that in on the next slide when I show you where I actually did it for this assignment. But this is where you would put the declarations. Always right after the start, then you're going to put your declarations. Now, in this case, and remember I said at the beginning of this process too, it's 90% of the time you're going to declare it inside a module. And this is in, for example, the calculate button. And this is where I actually would declare it. Here's the square. It's the very first thing. And in this case, I don't know how you could put it in however you want. I tried to keep it as specific but as general as I could. So in this case, I just said, create 3 variables of the double data type to store values in memory. And I even named them here, double miles, double gallon, double results. This is how you do a declaration box. And it's the very first thing. This is also inside the module calculate. For Visual Basic, 90% of the time, you're going to be declaring things inside a module where it actually does things, where it actually does the main calculations or whatever. So there you have it. I'll go over it. Let me go over this one last time real quick. IPO Design page. He needs this with the purpose, input, process, output, and a quick little wireframe sketch. He needs the main flow. And if your main flow, when you first begin the program, if you have declarations then, before you code like your buttons and things like that, you put them up here at the very top. And he needs the name of the module inside the oval here, inside the lozenge shape. When you're showing the flow for that module, you need to use the word return to denote that it is returning to the main flow and not ending the program if they execute this module. Those are all required. And lastly, again, like I showed with the main flow already, but the declaration box where you declare what variables are being made, what type they are, and why. It's to store values in memory, right? And you can even put the names of them so that you have an idea of what you're going to be using when you actually program. Those are all the requirements that he's looking for, I'm fairly certain. I get good grades on these assignments. The points I get taken off are technically for more minor issues. I usually get like 1 or 2 points taken off, but it's nothing too serious. So I'm fairly certain I covered everything he's looking for. If you already do it this way, that's fantastic. If not, hopefully I helped clear up some issues you may have had. Hope you have yourself a great rest of the afternoon.